Am I the a-hole for refusing to donate my kidney to my estranged sister, even though I'm the only match, after she kept my biological daughter from me for years? Here's a backstory. I, 29 female, was a reckless teenager, got pregnant at 17, and was terrified. My parents were conservative, and my sister Alice, then 27, convinced me to let her and her infertile husband adopt my baby to keep it within the family. She made me promise not to tell anyone the child was biologically mine and to always act as the aunt. However, things spiraled out of control. They moved away when my daughter Emily was just 2, and I was only allowed minimal contact. They changed her last name, and I found out they told Emily that her biological mom had died in a tragic accident. I confronted Alice, and she said it was for the best and cut contact completely. Fast forward to last year, Emily, now 12, discovered the truth. She reached out to me, angry and confused. I tried explaining, but she's resentful towards both me and Alice. Now, Alice has severe kidney issues and needs a transplant. I'm the only match in the family. She has apologized for everything and begged me to reconsider, stating it's just not for her, but so Emily doesn't lose a mother. I'm torn. Alice's friends and our extended family have been bombarding me with messages, some understanding, some extremely hateful. Emily is conflicted and has expressed she doesn't want her mother to die, but also feels a deep-seated anger. My husband thinks I should donate to be the bigger person, but my best friend says Alice made her bed and now has to lie in it. Am I the a-hole for considering not donating my kidney after everything that's happened? Now for the top comments. Don't forget, you saying yes doesn't mean that you will be whipped into surgery tomorrow. There is an extended period of testing and counseling, which needs to be undertaken before you would get anywhere near that stage. To get the family and friends off your back, say you will consider it, but tell the medical teams that you are being guilt-tripped by the family and you don't want to do it, and they will tell the family that you aren't suitable to be a donor for other reasons. You won't be the first bullied and unwilling potential familial donor they will have seen, and you won't be the last. And depending on your age, don't forget that this is a major life-changing surgery with a lengthy recovering period. If you can't work, who is going to cover your living expenses? If there is a history of kidney disease in the close family, what would happen if you developed it later on? It's better to think of yourself first here, especially as your sister has been so awful to you for so long. Yes, do this. My understanding is you can get tested for a match. They check privately if you're being pressured. If you say yes, they'll announce you aren't a match. Double check that's how it works, but do it that way. Former dialysis nurse here. Dialysis exists for this reason. She won't be leaving Emily without a mother, so you aren't sentencing her to death if you don't donate. Please don't donate. I've had a few patients end up on dialysis years after donating one of their kidneys, and it destroyed them and their relationship with the one with their kidney. Please don't donate to be the bigger person. It is a huge surgery with possible complications. Please don't put your life at risk. I wish someone would have told me how hard it would be on my body. I regret my donation every day. Not the a-hole. Do not donate your kidney to her. You may need it for yourself one day. She didn't want you in your life before she got sick and did you wrong. She'll probably cut contact with you again and say it's for the best after you donate it to her. Please don't donate the kidney. Not the a-hole. Do not donate by all means. Between a venomous snake and her sister, I trust a snake. Next story. Am I the a-hole for donating my deceased daughter's college fund to a charity instead of giving it to my estranged son? I, 48 male, lost my daughter, 21 female last year to a rare medical condition. She was in college, and we had saved up a substantial amount for her studies. The fund is around $120,000 left. My wife passed away 5 years ago, so it's just been the two of us for a while. My son, 24 male, and I have had a strained relationship for the past 6 years. He got into drugs, joined a problematic crowd, and committed several felonies. When he turned 18, after multiple attempts to help him, I had to kick him out of the house. It was the hardest decision I've ever made. Recently, he's cleaned up his act, or so he says. He's been off drugs for a year, has a job, and wants to go to college. He reached out to me, asking if he could use his sister's college fund. However, my daughter in her last days expressed a desire for the money to go to a specific charity that supports research into her condition. It was her wish, and I decided to honor it and donated the entire fund to that charity 2 weeks ago. When I informed my son of this decision, he was livid. He claims that I've chosen a dead daughter over him, and that I never cared about him at all. My relatives are divided. Some say I did the right thing honoring my daughter's last wish, while others believe I should have given my son a second chance. I'm tormented. Am I the a-hole? Either choice could be easily defended in theory, but your son's reaction suggests he needs to mature a bit more before you give him large sums of money. If you have the cash to spare, offer to fund community college once he's calmed down. That boy definitely sounds like someone who should try out a community college first to see if he can handle it before large sums of money are spent. To be honest, I wouldn't give him the cash, but I'd pay the bill statements from the college he's going to. Do not give him cash at all. This is how I feel. There's so much we don't know about the entire situation. If the son really is trying to make changes, having college paid could be the saving grace that helps him turn his life around. I agree with only paying it straight to the university, and maybe having the son complete a semester on his own to show that he's taking classes seriously and can do well. What happened to the college fund you set up for your son? Like others have stated, probably went to helping him with his many felony charges. Lawyers aren't cheap. Not necessarily if he kicked the son out at 18. If the son did enough before 18 to deserve getting kicked out at 18, he likely burned through anything that would have gone into a college fund. I have a family member who had a lot of drug issues before he turned 18, and his grandfather and his mother spent a lot on his defense, also called in a lot of personal favors to keep him out of jail. Lawyers don't reduce their rates simply because the defendant is under 18. Yep, I have a cousin who was the favorite grandchild. My grandparents bent over backwards, and she turned out just like her plastic, abusive, druggy, demented POS mother. Before 18, she totaled not only one, but two of my grandmother's $30,000 vehicles that she's told to go see a boy, within months of each other. Grandparents hired her a very expensive lawyer who got her off all the charges. A $125,000 house was bought for her so she wouldn't have to stay in the dorms for college. She got druggy roommates, they got pets, didn't take care of them, trashed the house, failed out of college, was allowed to take over the family business. She then got the business in trouble with the Liquor Control Board, a lot of money and fine. Grandmother saw the books and just about had a heart attack. Stole our grandfather's pain meds when he was dying from cancer. She and her then boyfriend, now husband, stole tens and tens of thousands of dollars from my grandmother right after my grandfather died from a horrible battle with cancer. She then took out credit worth over $60,000 with business lenders. And oh my god, the books. That was a doozy. And the drugs they left around the place. Almost lost the business, and now after COVID, it's closed. She calls her toddler sons little bastards to their faces whenever they act out. It's on video. The father is even worse. CPS has been called multiple times, and they only made her take parenting classes. It's a joke. All this before she turned 23, and I only know like 10% of everything. So, I can see how the son could have blown through his college fund before he turned 18. Next story. Am I the a-hole for wanting my husband to move away and told him divorce is fine with me? I, female 40, met my husband, male 51, 5 years ago. I love him very much. He has 2 children from a previous marriage, female 14 and male 13, and I have 1, female 13. His children never liked me because they always wanted their parents to move back together. When my husband met me, that dream was crushed, and it is very understandable. I gave them space and never tried to pressure them. When we got married, we moved into my home. They changed their mind when they realized I live in a big place with a pool, etc. We have been married 2 years. My daughter's father isn't in the picture, so my daughter lives 100% with me. I found out now that my stepdaughter has been bullying my daughter for the past couple of years, calling her fat, etc. I heard her make these comments. I told my husband to pack his children's bags because I never want to see them again. Because when I confronted my stepdaughter, she just laughed at me and called me and my daughter ugly and fat. And that my daughter deserved it. Turned out, my daughter has been bullied at school too, and the head of the bullying is my stepdaughter. My husband said that I couldn't kick out his children from their home, and that he would talk to his daughter. But he never did, so I told him that I understood that I can't demand that they stay with their mother since he has custody, so I told him that he should move out. We could meet on the weeks his children are with their mom, but that I'm done trying with his children. They will never love me or my daughter, and I'm choosing my daughter. He said I was being ridiculous, and that it wasn't marriage if he should live in a separate home from me when he has children. And I said if this didn't suit him, then I wouldn't mind divorce, because I'm not gonna have his daughter near mine again. I have no problems against my stepson, but my husband made it about him too because they're a whole package, which I totally understand. I can't demand that he doesn't see his daughter, so my suggestion is for him to move out and get his own place when he has his children. I spoke to my daughter about changing schools and she seems very positive to the idea. I still try to know more details about the bullying, but you know how embarrassing that is for children to admit. I never admitted to anybody that I was being bullied, even if my parents were very loving and supportive. Maybe I was even less inclined to confess to them because of how loving and supportive they were. Now for the top comments. Your daughter's mental health, happiness, and safety should always come first. You're doing the right thing, especially if he's doing nothing to stop his daughter from bullying yours. Take care of your daughter, Opie. If he's unable to defend himself against his abusive daughter, you should file for divorce. This, Opie has to defend her daughter. Nobody else will. I'm glad Opie is putting her daughter before her husband. Opie, your daughter will never forget you standing up for her. I assure you, it will mean a ton to her. Not the a-hole. You are doing right by your daughter. At this point, I would just opt for a divorce. It doesn't sound like he intends to do anything about his daughter. He may try and drag his feet to get his own place. May try and convince you that it won't happen again. I agree. Give him a strict timeline and stick to it. If he's too lazy a parent to do something about his daughter, he's too lazy to be in his marriage. You take care of yourself and your daughter. Period. If it was me, there wouldn't even be a timeline to set. If he wants to see his daughter, I'd understand. But it wouldn't be in my home or on my property. The stepdaughter would be leaving that minute, and he could come back for his things or not. But she would never get a chance to bully my kid again. You showed your daughter just how much you value her well-being and how unacceptable your stepdaughter's behavior was. Those are powerful lessons. Not the a-hole. Well done, you. Hopefully husband will move to a different school district, so the two girls are not going to the same school. Last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife her brother will never live with us? My 39 male and my wife, 37 female, have been married for 13 years. The entire time I have known her, her older brother Tom, 39 male, has never held a job or lived anywhere but with her parents. As far as I have been told, he has had a couple part-time jobs that didn't last long and lived for a few months in dorms when he tried college for one semester. My wife and I were visiting her grandmother in another state along with her mother, and a conversation of what happens to Tom when the parents are no longer able to support him came up. I mentioned he needs to be pushed to get a job and become independent long before they can no longer do it for him. And my wife's grandmother said she thought the idea was that Tom would just end up moving in with us when the time came. I looked at my wife, who didn't react at all to that news, as if she already knew that was the plan. But before anyone could say anything else, I said that is never going to happen. My wife told them we haven't really discussed it and the topic was changed. Later on, she said my response was uncalled for, and to flat out refuse makes me an a-hole. Am I? Or is my not wanting to support my 39-year-old bum of a brother-in-law valid? Not the a-hole. So she 100% is going to just let him move in and play the he's family card. I would start setting it up so you can leave when this happens. I was going to suggest that Opie have the conversation now and say, if you plan to have your brother move in with us, we should get a divorce now rather than later. But Opie's wife could lie and bide her time, so he should still have that conversation and also get his act together. My fiancé has a younger brother that cannot get his act together. Gets fired within a year of every job he gets if he doesn't rage quit. Has an outrageous car payment on a piece of crap that he doesn't maintain. Is constantly asking her for money which she doesn't give him. Blames everyone and everything else for his misfortunes. And is 1 or 2 speeding tickets away from either getting arrested or becoming uninsurable. I told her that when her parents aren't around anymore, we will absolutely not be filling in for them as a support system. Thankfully, she agreed and is just as annoyed with him as I am. They're family, so she's still cordial with him. But anytime he starts complaining about his latest issue, I throw out a few jabs if only to make him aware that not everyone is going to spare his feelings, especially when most of the time he is the architect of his own misery. We bought a house last year, and the first week we were in it, he was already asking if he could rent a room from us. Thankfully, we don't have the room to rent to him. But I still made sure he knew that even if we did, there was no way in hell I'd let him live in my house. Your fiancé's brother sounds like my sister-in-law. My wife and I were so happy when she moved 3 hours away and found a weirdo to marry. We were certain she would eventually need a place to live when she ran out of dead-end jobs. Yeah, I'm with you on this. I would never support any grown adult who doesn't work simply because he's lazy. If your wife feels the need to support him, then she needs to accept that he will never live with you and you will pay nothing to help him. She needs to understand now that she will be on her own for this. If she does want to support him, then I can see this ending in divorce. I know it would be for me. Opie needs to have an emotional conversation with his wife, explaining that their marriage is between the two of them, and that a third person wouldn't be healthy. It is important to be unemotional. Even if wife agrees, Opie needs to repeat annually. I think that ship has sailed, wrecked, and sank to the bottom of the ocean. At best, she'll just tell him whatever he wants to hear, then bide her time until brother has to move in, and it's a gotcha. I don't trust her and her family who have decided this behind his back. Probably since they got engaged over 13 years ago. They have no other plan. For them, it's been settled all these years. So they'll be coaching her to bring him to heel via gaslighting and manipulation. Not the a-hole. Still worth a conversation if only to eliminate the "we've never really talked about it" dodge. Get this thing fully on record. And ambiguously and equivocally, if it's here, I'm not. Make your choices accordingly. Part 2 of my brother proposed to my fiancé, his ex, and I'm mad. If you haven't watched the first part of the story yet, click the link in the description. Now, second update 2 months after the first update. It's been a while since I've posted, but a few things have happened since my last talk with Mark. So, I've been low contact with Mark since our last conversation. I haven't called him and he hasn't called me. And our only interactions have been in family settings. As it stands, my mom is now upset that Mark is still uninvited for my wedding. It started with a comment made during my younger sister Sophie, 22 female's birthday. Her boyfriend of I think 4 years proposed to her at the end of the night, and we sat around talking about what she envisioned for her dream wedding. She talked a bit about wanting a destination wedding and her ideas for the cake and dress. Then she said something along the lines of, "Teddy, I know Mark's banned from your wedding, but you won't care if he comes to mine, right?" I laughed it off and told her I can't get mad about her guest list, even if I wanted to. My mom gave me this weird look and asked if Mark was still not invited to my wedding. I told her yes, and she got irritated. She told me she thought I was joking and said I was being unreasonable to go through with banning him from the wedding since his family. She accused me of holding a grudge just to be petty. I reminded her that he and I agreed on him not coming. I then told her that this wasn't a time to talk about my wedding since the day was about Sophie. And if Mark or her want to talk about my wedding, they can call me another time. Sophie laid into my mom a bit about trying to make her special day about Mark, and my mom dropped the issue. For those of you who might be wondering, Mark wasn't at Sophie's party because he apparently had to work and couldn't make it. A few days later, my mom stopped by my house and said she wanted to discuss my wedding. She asked me why I was so adamant about Mark not coming to my wedding. She said that I shouldn't be so insecure about Mark and Jen's previous relationship, and that uninviting him was a step too far. I told her again that Mark and I mutually agreed on him not coming to the wedding, and he can come to me about it himself if he has a problem with it. We got into an argument and she said that if I wasn't going to reinvite Mark, then she would not be coming either because I'm ostracizing her son. I shrugged and told her that if that's what she wants, then she can toss her invite to the trash, because I won't beg her to be there. She asked me if I would really be okay with her not attending, and I told her it wouldn't be the first time she missed an event of mine because of Mark. She said I was being an a-hole for throwing her past mistakes in her face, and she stormed out. I then started getting messages and phone calls from her and a few family members about the whole situation, saying I was in the wrong and urging me to invite Mark just to keep the peace. Jen's also been getting messages from my mom asking her to talk to me and get me to change my mind, but to my knowledge, she hasn't been responding. So far, most of my mom's side of the family are standing in solidarity with her and not attending, while my dad and his side of the family, which is only my aunt and uncle and their 2 kids, agree with me and are still coming. My sisters are also still coming to the wedding, and of course Jen's family too. Also, I talked to Mark about it and asked him if he had a problem with not having an invite. He said he uninvited himself in the first place, and he doesn't get why they're making a big deal because he still doesn't want to go. He told me to leave him out of the fighting because he's not involved, and he says he'd tell her the same. As of now, I'm back to being low contact with my mom, but my dad and I are still on decent terms. I'm still deciding on whether I'll reinvite my mom and her family, should they change their mind about a boycott, but the chances are low, and I told my dad this too, which he understands. For now, Jen and I started looking into downsizing the venue since the guest list is significantly smaller. Now for the comments before reading more updates. Well, now we know where Mark gets his crazy from. Yikes.
A bad update 4 will be that Mama shows up in a white dress and makes an announcement of how Jen has torn her family apart. Update 5 will be how at her sister's wedding, she will talk loudly to anyone who will listen how horrible you both are. She needs therapy. Stat. We know where Mark gets his crazy from. First thought I had while reading this. Though I have to say that Mark's "I want to stay out of it and will tell mom to keep me out of it as well" stance is surprisingly mature here. If it's actually true and he isn't fanning the flames behind the scenes, that is. Mark is the golden child, duly noted. It's also so sad Mark won't at least tell his mommy that being uninvited to your wedding was his idea, and you just agreed with him after he requested it. I guess that's too much to ask. I've read your previous posts. I'm so sorry the both of you are having to deal with this. This is supposed to be a happy time for you both, and a 1-month relationship many years prior does not bar you from having a long-term relationship with your brother's ex. 1, you didn't even know about it until after you both became serious. Brother Dearest is still very immature and needs to get over himself. Maybe get some therapy. Your mother sounds like a narcissist and needs to cut the cord to Mark. Stop protecting him and recognize that she has more kids to mother than Mark. Now for the third update. My mom is uninvited from the wedding indefinitely. About 2 weeks after she decided to not come to the wedding, she came to stop by and said she wanted to clear the air and talk about everything. We agreed and invited her in to join us for dinner. Jen made her a plate of food, and I asked her if she was still planning on not coming to the wedding. She said that while she wants to, she can't get over me not inviting Mark because of a simple mistake. I reminded her that a simple mistake was proposing to my fiancé with me sitting less than 3 feet away from him, and she said it was just a joke. Jen asked her why she wanted to talk if she was maintaining the same stance on Mark coming to the wedding. She said she wanted to talk to Jen, and she was hoping Jen would hear her out and talk me into inviting Mark again. She apparently assumed I was at work, and she'd be able to catch her alone. Jen politely told her that she understood her thought process, but she wouldn't have had that conversation anyway without me present, since this is about my brother. My mom made a comment somewhere in the lines of Jen being spineless and unable to have a conversation without me thinking for her, which started a pretty heated back and forth between the three of us, before Jen told her to get out. She got up and started walking towards the door, and my mom followed her, still screaming at her. By this point, she's yelling about her tearing our family apart. While Jen was unlocking the front door, my mom grabbed her hair and pulled her to the ground, still screaming. She hit her and tried to claw her face, and I dragged her off of her and threw her outside. She banged on the door for a few minutes while I made sure Jen was okay, before she left and called both of us repeatedly. When I was sure Jen was okay, I texted my mom and told her not to bother reaching out again, because we'll never speak to her again. I called my dad and sisters and told them what happened too. My dad was surprised and tried to make excuses, saying she'd been stressed about this whole situation for a while. My sisters say they knew she'd snap eventually, since she's always been a crazy witch, and they said they'd come make sure Jen is okay. I asked Jen if she wanted to press charges, but she declined and said she only wanted to cut contact with her for good. I said that part was obvious, but she should still talk to the police since she was physically assaulted. But she doesn't want my mom to get arrested. My sisters and Jen's mom came by to comfort her, thankfully, so she's doing okay. My mom is blocked and everything, until Jen says otherwise. I genuinely don't know what to do now. Jen doesn't want to go to the police because she'd feel guilty having her arrested over this. But my sisters and I want to convince her too, and I'd at least want documentation in case something happens in the future. Edit. Some people were asking questions about my mom and my decision not to be open with Jen about my relationship with my parents. I figure I could give some background on why we're so strained. Like some of you said, Mark was the golden child. Mark was my mom's baby boy, and she didn't do much to try and hide it. They didn't spend much time with my sisters and I like normal parents did with their kids, unless they had to, but they'd spend time with Mark as often as possible, like taking him out shopping while we stayed with a sitter or bringing him home his favorite food and toys from the store where they'd shop alone. He usually got better things compared to the rest of us, like new expensive clothes while ours were thrifted, or new toys just for him compared to old toys we had to share with each other. If my sisters and I got gifts, they were for us to share, but my mom made it pretty clear that Mark's things were only for him and we shouldn't touch it. When Mark would screw up, I'd get punished for not being a good role model and showing him the proper way to behave. For example, Mark went through a phase of breaking his toys, and I got a beating because obviously he learned that behavior from me. When he was 8, Mark got in trouble at school for trying to push a kid down the stairs. I was grounded for 2 weeks and told to apologize to the kid for not teaching my brother right. When I turned 13, I pushed for my parents to start giving me an allowance. They agreed as long as I did household chores, like mowing the lawn, taking out the trash, raking leaves, etc. It was usually around $25 a week to help me start saving. Mark saw that I was getting money, and he begged my parents for an allowance too. Instead of making him work, $10 of my allowance money was given to him each week because we were doing such a good job with our chores that he never touched. Whenever I ask him to help, he'd tell me it's not his job to do chores, so why should he bother? It was around this time that I started really distancing myself from my brother. By the time I entered high school, we only talked to each other when we needed small favors or when we absolutely had to. I got my first job when I turned 17 because I wanted to finally get my own car and make money that they couldn't force me to give to Mark. My oldest sister Maggie helped me start my own bank account and showed me how to properly budget and save my money. I got my first car at 18 after all of my hard work. When Mark got his license, my parents asked me to let him use my car to get around and for some extra practice behind the wheel. Reluctantly, I agreed, and for a while, the arrangement was fine. Mark used my car when I didn't need it and helped maintain it pretty well. When he expressed wanting my parents to buy him his own car, my mom came to me and told me to give him my car because I needed it more. When I refused, she threatened to kick me out. We got in a fight that night, which ended with her giving Mark my car and taking me to transfer ownership of it to him within the following few days. Since I didn't have anywhere else I could go at a time, I just sucked it up and sighed it over. When I graduated high school, both of my parents skipped my graduation because Mark didn't want to sit in a long ceremony just to see me get a piece of paper, and my mom didn't want to leave him alone for the night. So I only had the support of my sisters and my aunt and uncle who wanted to take me out. They ended up having to bring me home at my parents' request because they made me dinner to make it up to me. It was a dinner I couldn't eat because my mom put shrimp and chicken on the same serving dish and I'm allergic to shellfish. My first year out of high school, I worked 2 jobs to buy myself another car. And at the start of the new school year, I moved away for college and cut contact with them. They, mostly my mom, tried to reach out for the first few months via social media, and Sophie. But I never responded, and I told Sophie she would be cut off too if she kept trying. When she couldn't get to me through Sophie, she tried going through my older sister Charlotte, and a few times Maggie and Mark until I threatened to file a restraining order for harassment. It was a bluff because I had no idea how to do it, but it managed to scare her off, and the most I got from her was happy holiday texts over the years. Around the time I moved back, Charlotte told me that they had been seeing a family therapist at Charlotte's request, and my parents wanted to apologize for their treatment of us. I was hesitant, but I agreed as long as they would be genuine, and a reconciliation process started when I moved back home. That doesn't even scratch the surface of everything they put me through, and it took a lot for me to even begin to let them back into my life. When I met Jen, I wasn't sure where my relationship with her was going or where my relationship with my parents was going. I didn't want to mention my family at all, mostly because I was ready to cut contact again if I needed to. Jen was understanding of it being a sore subject, and didn't press for more. I hope this helps shed some light on some of the questions I'd been seeing pop up. I would have made any reconciliation pivotal to whether or not they reimburse you for the car your mother stole. 1, I can't imagine favoring one child out of our 3. But 2, it's completely and horrifyingly unbelievable that your parents treated all their other children so awfully and incredibly disproportionately compared to the golden child Mark. And I'm really concerned that your sisters thought this was normal family dynamics to the point that they became flying monkeys for your mother. A, getting reimbursement for the car wasn't a hill I was willing to die on, since the damage was already done. Even now it's hard to believe Mark was the favorite. There wasn't anything really special about him. I don't mean that as an insult either. He was just a regular kid. My parents weren't having fertility issues. He wasn't a miracle, wasn't a meal ticket. They weren't having marital problems and using a baby as Band-Aid. He was just born and they decided to love him more than us. And believe me, they didn't think this was normal. They just have a soft spot for our parents because they are our parents, and they believe they have redeeming qualities. Mate, your parents and Mark are a-holes. You did the right thing by cutting your mother out and going low contact with your brother. Honestly, they're not family. You just share DNA with them. Live your life with the ones that matter and care for you. I do hope Jen presses charges. It sounds like the only way your mom will learn that actions have consequences. Take care and good luck. Thanks, bud. Pressing charges isn't in our future right now. We're just trying to get to the wedding. Now for the last update. I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to give me advice on what to do going forward, and all the kind messages and comments I've gotten over the past few days/weeks. Jen and I have read the comments together and everything is appreciated. To answer the most common question about why I chose to reconnect after everything, the short answer is because I would do anything for my sisters. Charlotte wanted the entire family around for the birth of her first child and to help her while she adjusts. She didn't want part-time aunts and uncles who would only visit her kid during birthdays and holidays. She was never the type to ask for much of anything growing up, so when she asked if I would be willing to try for her, I agreed, because it would make her happy. I also think part of me hoped that maybe they'd changed. I don't regret trying to reconcile either. My parents are still terrible, but I met the love of my life, so I call it a win. A few people wanted to know if there's an update, so here we go. Sorry if it's a mess or confusing. A lot has happened. We filed a report with the police and we were told that even though Jen doesn't want to pursue anything, it's not up to us to decide whether it goes further, but they would keep our preference in mind. We provided some pretty decent evidence of the assault, including pictures of Jen's face and texts with my mom and dad talking about what happened. We were advised to report and record any other incidents with my mom going further, in case anything else happens. Considering where we live, I doubt it'll go anywhere, but at least we have it on record. I got about 100 angry text messages that tell me they at least spoke with her regarding the incident. My mom tried to corner me leaving my job and screamed at me about trying to ruin her life. She kept screaming that I was an awful son for trying to get her arrested over a small misunderstanding, and she didn't understand what she'd done to deserve being punished like this. I told her that if she didn't like being in legal trouble, then she shouldn't have hit Jen. She demanded I tell the police to forget the report, which I refused. I told her exactly what the officer said about it being out of my hands. She had a tantrum in the parking lot and hit me a few times, just on the chest and arm before security intervened and dragged her off the property. I had to talk to my boss about the incident. Luckily, she was understanding of everything going on after I explained what was happening. When I got home, I told Jen what happened. She was upset and asked that we discuss the plan with my family moving forward. It was a long talk, but we took the advice of some Redditors and decided to go completely no contact with my family, aside from my sisters. We agreed that having them in my life is adding unnecessary stress for the both of us, and we aren't even married yet. She told me she wanted to consider moving away and putting some distance between us and my family. She said that she'd try to stay out of my family issues because it's not her place, but she refuses to put up with my mom and her behavior or my dad enabling her abuse. A lot more was said, too much to put in this post, but I agreed with her that they were more trouble than they're worth, and I also don't want to put up with this anymore. I also agreed to go to therapy and she's helping me find a therapist. I decided to call my dad after our talk and let him know I would be going no contact. He didn't answer the first time I called, so I left a message asking to have a long talk. When he called back, he asked if it was okay for my mom to be a part of the conversation. I told him it was okay, since she needed to hear what I had to say too. The conversation went about as well as you could expect. I told them both that Jen and I are cutting them out of our lives. My dad demanded to know why I would do something like that, after going through all the trouble of repairing our relationship. I told him that this entire thing with Mark has shown me that nothing is actually repaired between us. And as far as they're concerned, the world revolves only around my mom and my little brother. I told him that their continued favoritism of Mark has brought our relationship to a point of no return, and that I wasn't interested in holding on to a failing relationship. I told them that I agreed to reconcile for Charlotte's sake, but I don't appreciate all of the disrespect towards me and Jen, and that I wouldn't put up with it anymore for both of our sakes. To my mom specifically, I told her that I was tired of her using me as a scapegoat for her bad parenting and Mark's attitude. I also told her that I would never forgive her for what she did to Jen and what she did to me and my sisters growing up. She started to say how I should move on like my sisters have, but I cut her off and told her that she should take her forgiveness and move on, because she would never receive it from me, especially after everything she's done this last few weeks. She started crying and asking me how I could treat her like such a villain. I told her she could only be upset with herself because I've done nothing wrong. She cried harder and told me how much she regretted having me, and how I've only tried to ruin her life. This started a heated argument between her and Jen once again, and Jen told her in much more colorful words that she was disgusting, and plenty of other nice names, for saying something like that to me. I don't know if she left the room or just decided to shut up, but my mom stopped talking when Jen was done speaking to her. My dad said he wasn't okay with being shut out of my life, and he asked me to try to understand my mom's point of view. He said that she was also struggling because her kids were at odds, and I was being unfair to punish her for her struggles with raising and caring for us. The last thing he said was that we were a family, and I shouldn't let past mistakes stop us from moving forward. I told him that the only person she ever cared for was Margaret herself, and there was nothing he could say or do to make me change my mind. I told him that it was up to him whether to keep my number, but I would be blocking him and my mom everywhere, and I wouldn't be reaching out again. Then I hung up. Afterward, I sent a long email with a link to my posts attached to my entire family and inviting everyone, except my aunt and uncle and my sisters to the wedding. I hadn't cried in a long time, but Jen held me while I cried after writing the email, and she assured me we would be okay. My sisters also reached out to me after reading the email. I apologized to Charlotte for not being able to continue reconciling like she wanted, but she told me it was okay, and it's not my fault I had to cut them off again. The response from my family has been pretty mixed. Some are angry I aired out family issues on a public internet forum, while others are pissed at my parents because they never knew it was this bad. The last person I talked to about everything was Mark. He asked if I was cutting him off too, and I told him I wasn't, but I wouldn't be going out of my way to reach out to him either. He didn't argue, and just wished me the best with the wedding, and we haven't spoken since. Right now, Jen and I are looking for a new place to stay. The plan is to move closer to Jen's brother. He lives about 3 hours from where we are now, and Jen and I like the city he's in. I spoke to my boss about transferring, and Jen is looking into the option of working 100% remotely or possibly finding a new job. And once again, our venue's changed. Since the guest list is significantly smaller, my future brother-in-law is considering letting us use his lake house for our wedding. I don't plan to post any more about this unless the sky falls, at least not until the wedding, because I want to move on with life. But I'll try to answer any questions some of you might have. Thanks and happy holidays! Thanks for the update. I believe you decided on the only possible way forward. Nothing you will say change your mom. She alone can only change her behavior. And perhaps if she reads all the comments on your Reddit posts, she might get an epiphany and realizes she is a pretty crappy person and has a lot of amends to make if she wants to keep you and possibly your sisters in her life. Maybe therapy can help her, but I doubt it. Best wishes for your upcoming wedding. According to Sophie, she's read a lot of them and doesn't think Reddit strangers have the right to tell her she's a bad person. Lol. I don't think there's any amending left in me. Wish them the best. Just as far from me and my family as possible. Am I the a-hole for kicking out my boyfriend's 19-year-old daughter? My boyfriend of 3 years moved into my home 3 weeks ago after his lease went up, and he was unable to renew the price hike they expected. His rent was $1,600 for a 2-bedroom, and upon signing a new lease they said it was now $2,400. I have a 3-bedroom home and one son, 11. Both his room and my room have an attached bathroom. The guest room does not. We have lived here for 5 years and I bought it last year. My boyfriend has a 19-year-old daughter named Jess who visits him on the weekends and lives at home with her mother. Literally never had any issues with her, up until my boyfriend moved in. When he moved in, Jess started becoming this witchy snob, who had demand after demand that she fully expected me to meet. Like, she wanted me to kick my son out of his room so she could have the room with an attached bathroom, stating that a boy didn't need a bathroom as much as a girl did. When I said, absolutely not, she got extremely rude and condescending whenever she was in my home. She also tried parenting my son on more than one occasion, telling him what he can and cannot watch on the TV, what he can and cannot snack on, etc. There have been times when he has tried talking to us, and Jess will butt in and say something about how kids are so freaking annoying. If I speak up to her, she says, "I don't believe I was talking to you," or roll her eyes at me. Bold for someone who does not pay any rent or food costs to be staying in my home. I told her father last week that either he gets a handle on his adult kid or she was getting booted to the curb. He immediately starts telling me I need to give her time because this is an adjustment for her, and that apparently she is having a hard time at her mom's house due to them arguing all the time. I told him that wasn't my problem, and that in my house, me and my son were not going to be treated like crap because she can't control her emotions and wants to take her resentment out on us. He said he would talk with her. His talk did nothing at all. In fact, she confronted me about it and said, "I don't know what game you're playing here, but respect is earned, not given, and I will not be granting you respect until you prove to me you deserve it." She then walks to the living room where my son was watching TV and takes the remote from him and tells him to move. At this point, I go in and immediately tell her to get out of my house. She tells me she isn't going anywhere because her dad lives here. So I end up calling her uncle, who is a police officer, and have her escorted from my house after she collected all her belongings. My boyfriend says I crossed a line, so I told him he can leave too. He currently isn't speaking to me, locked away in my bedroom. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. My boyfriend says I crossed a line, so I told him he can leave too. He currently isn't speaking to me, locked away in my bedroom. Well, I guess you see who Jess inherited her odious attitude from. Not stay home, hold firm. Edited to add, boyfriend has lived there 3 weeks. Check local laws to make sure he hasn't achieved tenant status. just in case you have to put a boot up his butt to put him out a door. It's in his best interest for him to leave upon being asked, because if he hangs around to be evicted, things will get even worse. He will not be able to get his own place with an eviction on his record. It's time to call Uncle Cop again. Not the a-hole. The daughter needs help regulating, and who knows what else. Not even getting along with her mother. The boyfriend needs to wake up about his role as a dad and boyfriend. You need to get them both out and evaluate if there's a relationship to salvage with a boyfriend. Not the a-hole. I don't know what game you're playing here, but respect is earned, not given. And I will not be granting you respect until you prove to me you deserve it. That goes both ways, little girl. Lol. I know that 19 is technically an adult, but she's acting like a spoiled little child. Opie, I think you handled this just fine. You took it up with a boyfriend first and asked him to fix it. Obviously, he didn't. So you followed through with the consequences you said there would be. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not paying for my brother's gender reveal party? Back in March, I had my gender reveal party at a hall. My husband and I paid for catering, decorations, desserts, centerpieces, and candy for candy buffet. The only thing we didn't do was the signs, which one of my brothers took care of as he is good with woodworking. My eldest brother has 2 children, 12 and 13, from his previous relationship, then got married and now has 2 more little ones, under 10. I have never met his new wife. They just got eloped in March and none of my family has met her. They are now 18 weeks pregnant and will find out about the baby's gender in a few weeks. I was talking to my dear husband and we decided to give them $800. My elder brother asked if we could throw him and his wife a gender reveal party instead at the same hall we did ours at. I said it was a little more than $800, considering the hall rental deposit, desserts, candy buffet, catering, baby shower favors, centerpiece flowers. I do have most of the stuff saved: centerpiece jars, tablecloths, candy buffet jars, and some games from the party. But he even wants a backdrop which my friend did for me for free. She would charge him $150 for this since he is family. He said he really wants this, and if everyone paid for it, we can make it happen. I suggested a smaller venue or even a luxury picnic. I have the decorations for that, and would be more than happy to set aside a portion of what we were going to give him from the $800 for the catering. He was taken aback, as he thought we were going to give him the $800 on top of the party. He said, "Stop being cheap. You guys have the money, and you have never done anything nice for me and my kids." This is true. I was going to university when he had his children, so I was always broke. But I'm not working at the moment. I'm on maternity leave, so checks are small, and the money is coming from my husband, who is not really close to my eldest brother. He called me a cheap a-hole and said I have money saved up, so stop holding back. Now, I don't want to give him anything, and my other brothers don't want to give him anything either. Am I the a-hole if I don't give him anything at all now for his crummy attitude? Edit added. I forgot to mention this is both a gender reveal / baby shower. Not the a-hole, and he can take his entitled, ungrateful butt out here. I wouldn't give him anything. Thank you. I couldn't agree more. I know he is in a tight spot in regards to funds, which is why we were going to give him $800 for whatever he needed for his baby. I really don't mind doing a small luxury picnic for him, but didn't expect such a terrible attitude towards everything. My mom even suggested having a potluck so that we didn't have to spend any money on food, and he said that would look tacky. He wanted something really nice for him and his wife. I do have the funds, but I'm being careful as I'm on maternity leave and don't want to spend a lot at the moment. Get him condoms. He needs to stop having that many children and baby mamas if he's in such a bad spot. Regain his financial stability before having more kids. Lol, one of my brothers made that comment. A basket full of rubbers instead of baby clothes and diapers. What? Not a-hole. You don't owe your brother an expensive gender reveal party. If my brother pulled any of that, I'd say, oh, actually, my financial planner says it's best to set up a 529 for a kid. We'll do that once the baby's here, and make sure none of the money is accessible to someone with such terrible priorities in life. This is a beautiful idea, to open up a savings account. I'm assuming that's what a 529 is. Although then, knowing my brother will want an account for his other children, including the 2 that no one has even met yet. I just can't win. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for taking a joke too far and making my mom faint? I, 18 female, hate practical jokes because my parents love them. It was my 18th birthday last week, and it was the first time in 3 years that I was able to have friends and family over for my birthday party. My parents love practical jokes. You name it, they have done it to me or my older sisters. At each of my sister's 18th birthday parties, they pushed the birthday girl's head into the cake. I think this is stupid and a waste of cake. So, I talked to my friend Kyra, who is into cosplay and makeup. She is amazing, but she said not to post her Insta, and we came up with a plan. When my family was planning my party, I asked for them to please not push my face into the cake, and my parents agreed. So, on the day of my party, I was ready. When my parents inevitably pushed my face into the cake, I stood up and screamed bloody murder and squeezed the fake blood pack in my hand that I was holding up to my eye with a candle stub between my fingers. It was awesome. Until my mom fainted and hit the ground hard. Everyone was looking at me and no one caught her. She is bruised up and her and my dad are angry with me. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Your parents reaped what they sowed. You asked them to refrain, and they agreed not to do it, all of you knowing full well they'd do it anyway. You responded with a practical joke of your own. In fairness, it was a considerable escalation from getting cake on your face though. But ultimately, their terror and ensuing injuries could have been completely avoided had they merely kept their word. I'd argue that while it was a considerable escalation, it still wasn't uncalled for. It's a genuine concern, and better the parents learn not to do it from a practical joke than frantically driving a kid to the hospital. They were also asked not to do it, so yeah, that too. Yes, it may have been a practical joke, but it was also an unforgettable object lesson. Parents ought to be grateful, but that would mean admitting they're the a-holes. Or at the very bare minimum, if you're going to do a jerk thing like this, at least make sure it's safe. Why would you push someone's face who is not prepared into something with solid objects that are pointy? Why? Because idiots are idiots. I recently saw a video of someone trying to shove a guy's face into his birthday cake before he even blew out the candles. There were at least 8 dozen candles on a cake, probably more like 20. Dude tried to shove his face into a plate of fire. Fortunately, birthday boy resisted the push by locking his arms, and the entire glass table shattered instead. Next story. Am I the a-hole for going to my stepdaughter's birthday party instead of my son's graduation party? I, 46 male, have 2 sons, 20 Andy and 18 Sam, from my previous marriage. I got divorced from their mother about 7 years ago and have been in my stepdaughter, now 11, Emma's life for 6 years. I love her to death, and I see her as my own kid. Sam graduated back in June and was having a graduation party about a month later. But his party happened to be the same day as Emma's birthday party. She was really excited about her birthday and told me she wanted me to stay for her party. I said I'd try and call my son about it. The day before their parties, I told Sam I would try and stop by, but he kept insisting I come for the full thing. I told him I'd try, but Emma's birthday party is on the same day, and my wife and I have been planning it for over a month now. He just said okay and hung up the phone. Fast forward to the day of both parties. My wife said I should go to Sam's party. I was planning on doing so, but Emma told me she really wanted me to stay. I didn't want her to be sad at our party, so I agreed and told them I would just leave later. Emma's party was from 4 to 6 and Sam's from 4:30 to 7:30, so I was thinking I had plenty of time. I live over an hour away from my son, so I was planning to leave early. Anyway, I was helping my wife with a lot of stuff, taking care of the kids and other things. By then, it's already 6 p.m. and I feel bad. I have so many things to help my wife with for cleaning up, and since I live over an hour away, I know I can't make it. I did go to his graduation, so I assumed just going the day after to see him would be fine. Boy, was I wrong. I call him after that, and he practically goes insane, telling me he's extremely angry, saying I love Emma more than my biological kid and that I always forget about him. He then tells me he doesn't want me to come the next day and doesn't want me to talk to him. I haven't missed a lot of his events, so I feel like he's overreacting. I didn't go to his 18th birthday party because of a big meeting I had, and I get why he was mad about that. But this seems like an overreaction. I apologized to him, but he didn't accept it. My ex-wife and wife said I should have gone and that I was being an idiot. My oldest son says I always choose Emma over him, which is not true, and that I was being a horrible father. I do feel bad, but I lost track of time. He won't talk to me, and neither will my oldest son. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole. My oldest son says I always choose Emma over him, which is not true. I don't know, my guy. In this case, you absolutely did choose Emma over him. It doesn't help that you say at least twice that he's overreacting, trying to negate his feelings on the issue. Also, why couldn't they push his stepdaughter's party forwards? She's 11. It's perfectly reasonable to do a 9 to 1 p.m. party or a 12 to 3. He's an hour from his son, so he could leave at 3 and get there by 4. There are 100 things he could have done, but he chose to screw his son over. Why couldn't they push stepdaughter's party forwards? This is what I don't get too. Like, Opie even says how he and his wife have been planning this party, so there's no reason they couldn't adjust the time frame to make it work for both kids. Opie, you're the a-hole. Not only that, but he knew about the double booking well in advance. Told Emma he'd talked to his son about it and then didn't until the night before both parties. I literally snorted at the flash forward after that. He made it into his 40s, with 2 adult children and on his second wife, while still thinking 12 hours is an appropriate amount of time to juggle this sort of scheduling? You're the a-hole, Opie, and your weaponized incompetence is juvenile. Last story, am I the a-hole for refusing to be a bridesmaid in my sister's wedding? I, 28 female, come from a big extended family. Including me and my sister, 23 female, there are 24 female cousins and 17 male cousins. Half of the cousins are already married. When the first one ever asked me to be a bridesmaid, I declined. When I attend a wedding, I want to have fun, eat food and dance. In exchange, I will get you a gift. I do not want to spend my energy, time and money on your big day. And when I get married, I will not have a bridal party, nor will I expect a bachelorette party. Well, all of the cousins understood. There were no hard feelings. And to be honest, with that many cousins, it wasn't even an issue. Now, my younger sister is getting married. She asked me to be a bridesmaid and I declined. And I did it very gently. I told her sorry, but with working full-time, being in the final stages of preparing my thesis and teaching some summer classes, that I would not make a good bridesmaid. Also, my sister is a total bridezilla. The dresses she's looking at for her party are $450. She expects a weekend bachelorette in Vegas with all the bells and whistles. And wants everyone to attend dance classes to learn this elaborate dance to surprise her with. I do not have the energy for all that nonsense. Now, she said I am not invited to her wedding. If I am not willing to put forth the effort to make her day perfect, then I do not deserve to be there. Honestly, I don't care. But my mom and some aunts are calling me an a-hole. So, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. If I'm not willing to put forth the effort to make her day perfect, then I do not deserve to be there. You don't deserve to be there? Jesus, how full of herself can she be? After a comment like that, I wouldn't go to that wedding if she paid me. As if her wedding is the event of the year. As if Opie has probably already been to 20 weddings, where she can actually enjoy herself thanks to her cousins. But yeah, her sister's wedding is somehow going to be way better than those. Can you imagine how many actual weddings there are a year in that family? Not stay home. Just seeing how she reacted to your refusal, you know you made the right choice. Save yourself from all the rest of her BS. It might be a very small party if she keeps behaving like this. I think the mom and the aunts may have spoiled this younger sister. Now they can be her bridesmaids and take her to Vegas. Not stay home. Wedding parties have gotten ridiculous these days. We've gone from a bridal shower to a shower and a bachelorette party to a bachelorette weekend at an expensive destination. Not to mention the wedding day with a dress, shoes, hair, and makeup. If you know that it's more effort than you're willing to put forth, then you'd be an a-hole if you agreed to be in the wedding party. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister there's a reason her kids chose to live with her dad? I, 32 female, have a 14-year-old daughter, Jess. Her father, my husband, died in an accident when she was young, so it's been just the two of us for a long time. As a result, we are very close, and she's a lot more open to me than most kids are with their parents. Around a week ago, she asked me if I could take her to the movies on a date with a guy in her class. I know the guy distantly because they've done some extracurriculars together, and I was thrilled he was my daughter's first boyfriend. I took them a few days ago and they ended up hanging at our house for a bit afterwards. He was extremely polite, and maybe it's just the mom inside me, but I couldn't be happier for her. I went to my older sister's house for a coffee earlier this morning. For backstory, my sister has two teenagers, 16 and 17, who live almost full-time with their dad. They had a very messy divorce around 3 years ago, and both kids choose to live with their dad. The reason for this was because my sister was extremely overbearing on them. She was the kind of mom who believed kids should have no privacy, and she should run their lives until they were adults. I know she had many arguments with them because she would take away their doors, not let them hang out with friends, search through their phones every night, etc. This was the primary reason for her divorce, although she won't admit that. While I love her, as someone who grew up with little privacy, I fully understand why her kids don't want to live with her. My daughter came up in conversation and so brought up her first date. When I explained how it went, my sister laughed and told me that I must be joking. When she realized I was serious, she told me I was a terrible mother for letting my daughter walk all over me and not setting boundaries. She ranted on for a while, but she basically said that 14-year-olds are incapable of going out themselves and that I was being lazy and neglectful by allowing her to do that. She also said I would never allow my kids to do that. So I replied by saying, "That's exactly why your kids live with their dad." She got very quiet and then told me to leave. When I got home, I started thinking more about what I said, and while at the time I thought I was simply telling her what she needed to hear, now I'm wondering if I crossed the line. Now for the top comments. Not a hole. A hit dog hollers. She was only upset by what you said because deep down she knows is the truth and doesn't want to admit it to herself or anyone else. And she had no problem telling Opie what a bad mom she is. Go figure. All the worst people can dish it out but can't take anything. They just crumble under the weight of their own BS. Amen. Opie's sister could have had a better relationship with her kids if she had eased up. And honestly, probably still could if she would make amends. Instead, she's making herself the victim while judging others for actually trying to care about their kids and have a more open relationship. Not stay home. Your sister thinks holding boundaries is the same thing as making demands. And she'll eventually learn that her children aren't accessories to treat as she wishes without consequence. This right here. Opie's sister emulated their parents, I'm assuming, and thought, it worked fine for me, so it should work for my kids too. But she's too stubborn to admit that was the key reason for the divorce. While it was a low blow, I say Opie wasn't the a-hole for saying it. Sis needs a reality check. Was it a low blow though? The sister had been crapping in Opie's parenting for a while. Also, why would you want to control the lives of your children instead of guiding them to adulthood? Learning about responsibilities and staying safe? I never understood those controlling parents you see so often on the sub. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my mom I'd rather spend my vacation at the beach than sleep in her living room? I have been living abroad for almost 2 years, and I haven't visited home since I moved away. Next year, I will have the opportunity to take a month off work with a paid round-trip flight to visit home. This is part of my job's bonus structure. This trip wouldn't be until the late spring at the earliest, but I decided to talk to my family about it now, because I know my parents like to plan trips every year in the spring and summer. My parents live in a 4-bedroom house, which are currently used as a master suite, a guest room, and 2 offices. My dad works from home and my mom's job is hybrid, so hers is also a craft room. My 28-year-old brother has been living in the guest room since last fall when his ex-girlfriend dumped him and kicked him out. He is saving money for a down payment on a house, and this is why they do not charge him rent to live there. When I asked my mom if I would be able to stay with them for the month I have off, she told me I would be more than welcome to crash on an air mattress in the living room, but she wouldn't be inconveniencing my brother just for me. I was really confused by this because I hadn't even mentioned my brother. She then told me that since my brother also works from home, he's been using her office to work in addition to the guest room, and that means I wouldn't be able to use her office for an air mattress. For the record, the room he sleeps in has a nice handmade desk built into one of the corners that I guess he uses for a large flat screen. I asked her if it was realistic to assume my brother would even still be there 8 months from now, considering he's supposedly saving for a house. She said he doesn't currently make enough to afford a house in their town. It isn't willing to consider a neighboring town, which is what my other 2 siblings did when they bought their houses. So is living there indefinitely. I was annoyed. My brother is the youngest, and she has a history of prioritizing whatever he wants over the needs and desires of her other 3 children. And I told her I wouldn't be sleeping on the floor of an open room for a month. I said if I wasn't going to be paying for an Airbnb, I'd rather go to the beach. She was offended that I'd go somewhere else and told me they'd all really like to see me. I told her if she really wanted to see me, she'd put a little more effort into making sure I was comfortable while I was there. The call ended poorly. This was a few weeks ago and I haven't responded. When I explained what happened to my older brother, he agreed that mom is being a bit unreasonable, but my sister told me I was acting entitled. I should be grateful they'd let me stay at all. So I told my sister I'm just going to rent an Airbnb at the beach and they can come see me if they want. Am I the a-hole for refusing to stay with them if I have to sleep on the living room floor? Not the a-hole. It's not like you are going for a week. You're going for a month. It is insane to be upset that you're not willing to crash in the living room with zero privacy. Seriously, she has no problem making Opie sleep on an air mattress on the living room floor for an entire month, but mommy won't tell her son to work in his own room while she's there so she can sleep in the office? Not the a-hole. Who the heck wants to sleep on an air mattress for a month and in the living room? Your mom is being very unreasonable and unduly playing favorites. Go to the beach. I'd rather go to the beach anyway. And when they come visit her, they can bring the air mattress and sleep in her living room. Not the a-hole. Your mom is the real villain here. As families morph over time, bedrooms change, etc., as you see. Your parents are no longer keeping room for everyone. It is not unreasonable for them to have allowed your brother to live there for the time being. Where she really goes off the rails is how she handles this. She should have simply said that she feels bad because the house is only set up for one guest at a time, and they are currently supporting the brother for the reasons given. Presumably the two of you can't share the guest room somehow. If it were me, I would have taken great pains to make you feel welcome and loved, even while explaining the challenges. She doesn't seem to have even tried. You unfortunately showed your frustration with a biting response. You're not the a-hole, but if you could have kept calm and understood the dilemma beforehand, it would have gone better. If I were your parents, I probably would have offered to help pay for a B&B just because I felt bad that you couldn't stay with us. Hope you can work out a relationship going forward. I didn't mention this in the post because I didn't think it was relevant, but since moving out, I have noticed that they treated my moving out differently from my other siblings. They retained all of their rooms for a few months before making changes after they moved out, but they started repainting my room an hour after they got back from dropping me off the airport. I lived with them as an adult to save money and take grad classes, and they charged me rent and utilities that they don't charge my brother. I think this whole situation has just hammered in that my mom doesn't value me the same way she values my other siblings. It's been weeks, and she hasn't even noticed I haven't been in contact. I usually call at least once a week. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my son that being a nerd doesn't mean that he's superior to anyone, especially his little sister? I have two kids, Jake and Jamie. Jake is 16 male and big into the media I like is my entire personality. And I'm better than you because I like those things. It has grown up to be very judgmental, cold, and mean. We honestly do not know how this happened, but his nasty attitude comes out the most at his little sister. Jamie is 14 female and is a very bubbly, friendly girl. She makes friends with everyone everywhere she goes, and she's also kind of a mini trendsetter for her school. She started selling homemade scrunchies at school and it took off. Jake makes fun of her all the time for being vapid, girly, etc. So my husband talked to him about misogyny because we were both shocked on where that came from. We thought the issue was handled and he started to be nicer to Jamie. Until the last week of school, Jamie came home from school having won an award for the scrunchie business. We were proud of her and had tacos, her favorite, for dinner. Mind you, if Jake did something like that, we'd do the same. We love to celebrate their successes. Well, Jake was displeased at dinner and interrupted to talk about his video game accomplishments. We were all very polite and listened and congratulated him. He just looked at his sister and was like, and I did that by myself, without having to make everyone else hear about it all the time and dressing up like a pick-me to get everyone's attention. I just looked at my husband, then Jake, and said, being a nerd doesn't make you superior to anyone in this family, Jake. You can like video games and still be a nice person to your family, especially your little sister. Quit acting like a little snot. He got red in the face and took his little tantrum upstairs to his room. Since then, he's barely talked to anyone and just holes up in his room playing games all day. My husband did tell me that I shouldn't have said that, because it's going to pit them against each other more, even though Jamie doesn't get why her brother treats her like this. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Cut the internet off and see how much he can do by himself then. Perfect idea. And let us know if you do that in an update. Kid sounds like a nice guy in the making. I recommend some therapy, but also try to open a dialogue with him to figure out where all this anger towards anything feminine comes from. I think there might actually be some kind of secret here. Not the a-hole. A lot of younger people who play a lot of video games are subject to others online. Men who play video games online kind of tend to be misogynistic and judge feminine things. He could be picking it up through the gaming. Either way, not stay home. Definitely find out why it's like this and post an update. The gaming community can be full of nasty, juvenile, and toxic people. How involved are you guys in monitoring what he plays, who he is talking to, etc.? Having seen his attitude, his beliefs, and his actions towards his sister, you as his parents don't get to throw your hands up and shake your heads. Get him in therapy or with a mentor, or start having one-on-one time with him to break down these views. They need to be addressed now, else you are going to have a grown man with nasty ideas and attitudes in the world. Step up as parents. Calling him a nerd was stupid and unhelpful. That's not accurate or even vaguely a lesson or hard truth. And surely a one-off remark is not enough. Do more, do better, get more involved. Your son needs you guys now. Step up before it's too late. Seriously, this is exactly what my now 40-year-old brother was like growing up. And it was indulged. We now all have to deal with a barely employed, condescending a-hole who still talks about his video game accomplishments at dinner and breaks down in tantrums regularly. I wish my mom had the balls to call him a mean nerd back then, lol. Last story. Am I the a-hole for threatening to call the cops on my parents and calling my dad a human trash can after what they did to my sister? This entire thing honestly sounds like some type of soap opera and caused people a lot of grief, so I'd like third-party opinions. I, 17 female, have a half-sister on my dad's side, Jasmine, 27 female. Me and Jasmine aren't super-duper close, but she's very nice. We do keep in touch and just vent about life. Dad isn't very understanding towards Jasmine. I don't really know how to put it, but from what I've seen and heard, he's very pushy towards her and almost always makes some remark about how she's not doing enough. Mom doesn't like her much and says that she doesn't respect them. Jasmine has a friend, John, early/mid-30s male. I put quotation marks because it's obvious she and John are a lot more than friends, and she has told me before that she loves him, but she refers to him as a friend in front of mom and dad, although they also suspect otherwise. John lives in a neighboring state to us. Jasmine was going to catch a train there and meet him at a station. Long story short, and from the details I heard, Mom got hold of Jasmine's phone when she came over at some point and blocked John's number. She has her Gmail on her phone, which Mom also blocked John's email from. Jasmine didn't realize until way later. This caused a huge misunderstanding between them. She basically went to the station, waited for hours, and he didn't show up. Jasmine was in a really bad state and couldn't believe my parents could pull something like that. So I asked them, and Mom said she and Dad thought this needed to be done for her own good. I shouted at them, threatening to call the cops if they don't apologize to Jasmine and try to make things right. Side note, I don't know if the cops would do anything in this case or if they're relevant. I just said it in the moment. Dad said I was butting into adult matters and I was too young to understand. I said he understood enough and called him a human trash can. They said I need to mind my mouth and apologize to them, which I refused to. Mom said how she can't believe I would act like this, and I've picked up on Jasmine's tendencies. My uncle came over the other day and I heard Dad crying to him about how he's so hurt by his daughter. Me. I think what I said was justified, but there's quite few people telling me I'm in the wrong. So did I go too far with my outburst? Am I the a-hole? Butting into adult matters. Mom said after stealing her adult daughter's phone to block the number and email of a man she is with. It's not even the mom's daughter, it's her stepdaughter. Not the a-hole. But OP, stay close to your half-sister. You've seen what your parents are capable of, and I have a feeling they're going to do this stuff to you too. Not the a-hole. Blocking John from Jasmine's phone was vile and awful. The way the world is today, Jasmine could have been robbed or abducted waiting around a train station for hours. Yes, this was part of my reasoning too. I just felt really bad for her. Despite my parents' thoughts, she really is a very kind person and sister. Your mom could be jealous of Jasmine knowing your dad had another life before she came along. If anything, your parents are like jealous teenage girls that are spoiled. Not stay home. Your parents shouldn't have gone through her phone. Why hasn't she said anything to them? Or has she? She did. They had a whole massive argument. And Dad has said that if she listened and didn't try to argue all the time, they wouldn't have had to do this or something. I don't really know the full details. That's dumb. If she didn't listen like they're saying, it still doesn't give them the right to go through her phone. And she's an adult, so that's invading her privacy. It's still invading privacy of a minor, but saying that as an adult she can do what she wants. It's not like she was hurting anyone by meeting him, so what even is the problem?